I actually know a lot of people who are very well off who've never bought a second house. They have a house they live in, and that's enough, right?
Yeah, even Nikhil Kamath.
Nikhil Kamath, I think still rents. So.
For us, we are damn young, okay?
Buying a house very early in early on in your career is a risky thing to do.
Dogs are babies. They're like, I think
True that.
even they're literally babies.
They're forever babies.
Yeah.
When you talk about sort of getting a pet or having a child at some point, how are you guys thinking about it financially speaking?
We might be in Thailand, we might be in Dubai.
If your EMIs for the house are not a very significant chunk of your salary, the guideline is like not more than that.
Yep.
So you need to get to that point. This is a decision that couples ponder a lot, which is buying or renting a house. So how do you see house first of all as an investment, and what are your thoughts on buying a property to settle down in?
I think I'll start.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So for us, we are damn young, okay? I think we are young, and in the next 3 years, we might be in Thailand, we might be in Dubai, like we might be. And we really, the first house we buy, we don't want to make it an Airbnb. I don't want ROI from that.
Yeah.
Right.
That should be the home, right? So I think for me, I would love to buy a house before our first child.
Right.
That is what I think.
Yeah.
And we can take it forward.
No, absolutely. I think we feel that because we might also move around.
Yeah.
And we don't want to buy a house just for investment. I think the first house we want to buy is to live in, right? So there would be a very, categorically choosing the location, the country for that matter.
Yeah.
Let's assume even if it's in Bangalore, the size, the location, things like that, where we want to live in that house. Because at least in my experience of seeing my parents and grandparents and next say close family and friends manage homes as investments, right? Because couple of years back, a lot of my friends bought houses at Bhartiya City, for example.
Yep.
So that becomes, if you're doing this early on in your 20s and your first house is for investment, that's a very time-consuming investment. Now, people always say that, rental yield is, while rental yield is less than fixed deposit, it's still, your principal is growing and all of that. That makes sense. But there's also this big time component that goes into it, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Brokers,
we don't have the
leases,
time.
all of that. So it's very time intensive. It's best to put your time into, say, personal life as well as work.
Yep.
And we will buy a house, I think, most likely, closer to our first child, and a house that we'll want to live in.
Exactly.
And then
Makes complete sense.
could buy houses later.
Yeah.
I actually know a lot of people who are very well off who've never bought a second house. They have a house they live in, and that's enough, right?
Yeah,
So
even Nikhil Kamath.
Nikhil Kamath, I think still rents. So.
Yeah,
No, I think
exactly.
this is a very important and hot topic, I would say, right? Because a lot of influencers out there actively discourage people from buying houses. But my personal take is
what's your personal
that
take?
again, no one size fits all.
Exactly.
One size fits
The
all.
first point is the flexibility. If you need a flexibility, it doesn't make sense for you to buy a house to
Yeah.
live in. If you're settling down,
Yes.
also the house provides a bit of a stability, right?
Yes.
For sure.
As opposed to renting and you don't know whether
Yeah.
the
You
lease
don't
will
know.
be renewed next
Yeah,
year.
and they might kick you out.
They might kick you out. Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't know if it'll be renewed,
So
right?
it's a very personal decision.
Yes.
And if you ask me from a financial standpoint, I would say buying a house very early in early on in your career is a risky thing to do.
Yes.
Because you're putting a lot of money into one asset. That's point number one.
Correct.
And second is that you don't have liquidity.
Yeah.
Selling a
You
house
don't
is
have
a pain.
leverage.
Yeah, there's a big opportunity cost there, right?
Yeah.
If you want to start up,
Yeah.
right, and you have a 60K EMI, you're not going to do that, right? You're just not going to do it.
Yeah. So financially speaking, what we tell all our clients is that only buy a house if you have an investment portfolio big enough to not be dented very significantly for your down payment. That's number one.
Yeah.
And number two is if your EMIs for the house are not a very significant chunk of your salary.
Yeah.
So the general guideline is like 30 to 35% of your salary and not more than that.
Yep.
So you need to get to that point in your life and that income level
Yeah.
compared to the house that you want to buy.
Yeah.
essentially.
I think-
that's a good rule actually, because they have these rules for cars, right? That
Yes,
all the cars
exactly.
plus your maintenance plus service
Yes.
should be less than 10% of your net income. So if 35, I didn't know 35 was the number actually.
Yeah.
But if 35 is the number, that's a good number to keep in mind. So,
Exactly.
Nice.
So that would actually even apply to a rental. So if you're renting a house, so 30 to 35%
Yeah,
would be a
makes
guideline for
sense.
that, and similarly for your
Yeah.
EMI as well. Okay. So you guys talked about buying a house potentially before you have a first child.
Yeah.
So is this something? I don't know if I'm prying, but is this something that's on the horizon? Is this something that you're planning for, or do you subscribe to the DINK philosophy? which is dual income and no kids.
Guys, no kids for at least the next 5 years, please.
and you just did a whole financial forensic audit of our bank account, and he asked, I don't think I hope I'm not prying, but I think Dink works well. I mean,
Yes.
again, to each their
Dink
own,
always.
but you
Maybe
have
a cat?
flexibility. It's similar to
That's about it. A Persian cat. That's
yeah,
about it.
and a dog is even more of responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Like, so
Dogs are babies. They're like, I think
True that.
even they're literally
they're
babies.
forever babies. We
Yeah.
love dogs. We've had dogs
Yeah.
before in our lives.
Nice.
But I think the broad principle we follow I think you should always have an anchor to take any decision, right?
Yeah.
And because topics of cats and dogs and kids
Yeah.
and all of this comes up, even home, for example, right?
Yes.
It falls under the same bucket of what kind of flexibility do we want for the
Yeah.
next couple of years, right? At some point, there's body clock issues.
Yeah.
There's
Financial
you are
clock.
aging. There's financial
Yeah.
clock. All of that, right?
Yep.
But before that, for the next 3 years, 4 years,
Yes.
even if you see the cutest dog or you see the cutest house,
Exactly.
we know we prioritized flexibility and not
Exactly.
these kind of
Yeah.
other aspects of life. So
Yeah.
Got it.
that
got
way.
it. And when you talk about sort of getting a pet or
Yeah.
having a child at some point, how are you guys thinking about it financially speaking? Would both of you like to be in a more stable part of your career? Would you change your investment portfolio somehow? Like how would you think? Let's say hypothetically speaking, if we were to look for having a child, say 2 years later, would
Yeah.
that change how you think about your money?
I've actually not thought about this so
Yeah.
intently, but this is a great time to maybe think about it now, like more structured, right? I think definitely would love to be, I'll say mine personally, and then I think you should keep
Yeah.
yours because we may have both our preferences. I think I definitely want to be in the most stable part in my career, which means either a stable career itself or an unstable career, but there's liquidity and serious liquidity to fall back on, right? Which means your expenses plus your children's expense, your baby's expenses, which is significantly more than just a normal child.
Yeah.
All of that is covered for at least maybe 2-3
Yeah.
years.
Got it.
Then I can be a startup founder in a Series C stage at a volatile market, right?
Got it.
But otherwise, I think being in a stable career in some form is obviously a lot less stress, because I think how the
Yeah.
world just works is that men should be stepping up at this point, right? Where it is a tough journey for a mother to have a child. So having the security of a stable income is
Yeah.
good. I think that's something that I would strive for personally.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and that's a very valid point that you made about having that buffer of 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Again, links back to the emergency funds conversation that we were having.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the amount of emergency funds that you should be having, you can determine the amount based on your current obligations, your goals,
Yeah.
your liabilities. Right?
Yeah.
So having a child is like having a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we need
Yeah.
high emergency funds.